Thanks for joining us today on What's Your Angle? I am Max Leaman with my co-host and good friend Eric Bramlett. Really excited today to do this. As you guys know, our idea with this podcast is getting successful people in a room together to talk about how they did it, what they do, what's their angle. And so we're really excited today for this episode.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks, Max. And really excited today. Brittany is, sometimes I say like this is like meeting a celebrity, but it kind of is meeting a celebrity. She's written a really killer book called Creating Superfans. And if you've talked to me at all in the last 3 months, I've probably mentioned it to you. Creating Superfans is really awesome book that kind of walks you from S to R, instead of A to Z on how you can build a business by referral, how you can create really passionate clients or customers. And I think it's incredibly applicable to the real estate industry and to the mortgage industry, but also to effectively any business that you want to build. So Brittany, thank you so much for being here today.
Yeah, thank you guys both so much for having me, Eric. I really appreciate you evangelizing for the book, and so excited to talk to you and Max today. This is going to be a fun episode.
Absolutely. So before we dive right into the book, Brittany, you have a super interesting background, and you and I both share that we escaped Oklahoma, so that's pretty cool. I joke about escaping, but it's interesting that you started out there, and then right after college, it seems like you dove straight into building your own business. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I always wanted to work in the music industry. That was my dream from the time I was tiny. I got a job at a radio station when I was 16, which turned into an opportunity to write for the station website, which turned into internships at record labels. After I graduated college, I moved to New York. I worked for Sony Music for several years. Then I went to work for an entertainment advertising agency. But I had the itch to create a product that would get fans closer to the artists that they love. I always, was keenly aware of how fortunate I was to get to meet my favorite stars and have these crazy adventures backstage at shows that, most people didn't get to have. And I wanted to really create something that would make people feel closer to the artists that they love. So I had this idea for like a super fan package. Couldn't get a lot of support at any of the places that I had worked. Finally, in a conversation with a buyer at Walmart, she said, well, I'll just give you a vendor number. You've been talking to me about this for years since you worked at Sony. Why don't you just launch your own business? And so right after I turned 26, I launched a company that had the ability to get products into Walmart stores, which was huge for, really any entrepreneur, but especially one that was sort of just still figuring out the ropes and learning what it meant to, start a business. Like I literally Googled how to start a business and then started a business. So I launched this company to help superfans connect with the stars that they loved. Within the first probably 18 months, we had worked with Taylor Swift, Justin Bieber, Katy Perry, Kiss, George Strait, the Beach Boys, like you name it, because we had the ability to create these cool products that would then immediately be sold by the tens or sometimes hundreds of thousands of copies in Walmart stores nationwide. And it was such a great lesson in not just fandom, but customer experience. And as the brand grew and as we started to work with more and more celebrities, as we started to get more and more brands involved, like because we were doing things at such large scale inside of Walmart stores, it was very easy for us to make calls to companies like Johnson & Johnson and Coke and say like, hey, we've got this huge thing happening at 4,000 Walmarts. Do you want to be a part of it? And put some of your product on these displays alongside, these huge celebrities and these cool products that we're making. And so I started to really become obsessed with like non-experiential customer experience. Like, how is somebody a fan of something that they don't get to witness live? Like you're not going to have a concert, but how can you take some of that same energy and bring it to selling your CPG brand or consumer packaged good brand at a Walmart store? Like, what does that look like? How do we create this like live experience for things that aren't like selling out tickets at stadiums? And so that's when I really began to think about like, how can I make anything feel experiential? How can I get people to create fans in the same way that like a celebrity is creating fans at a concert without having any of that benefit of of filling up arenas. So that's where this idea of creating Superfans came from. That's where this idea of like, how can we make anything feel a little more rock and roll? How can we create fans who are passionate about the products that are parts of their lives?
That's amazing. Did you coin the phrase CX, consumer experience? I had not heard that before. I don't know if that's because I'm ignorant or if you came up with that.
You're certainly not ignorant. I did not come up with it, but it's
Okay.
not like that widely known. Like it was years of me evangelizing for customer experience before I happened upon this phrase CX. And so I think it's not widely known outside of, marketing circles. And I also think a lot of people think customer experience is synonymous with customer service, which it is absolutely not. And one of the things that I write about in my book and that I try to just preach all the time is customer service is part of customer experience, but so is sales, so is marketing, so is operations, so is onboarding. Like every single part of your business is ultimately part of the customer's experience. And if you're not owning that experience, then things can go haywire at any point.
Go ahead. So I think I've got all sorts of stuff to go over, and I've got a lot of questions and things, but that part I found really interesting. I kind of felt like it was something that we've, for the most part of my career, been doing and not realizing the difference between customer service and customer experience. But you talk a lot about not just the during, but the before and after that gets missed so much. And so I think that encompassing it as the customer experience versus customer survey is really smart or customer service rather, but it's really smart. It's really important. And you do a really good job of going over that in the book. I've got to ask before we get too far into this. Obviously, I'm a big fan of Shark Tank. I've actually been fortunate enough to meet a couple of folks that have done that. I know you were on that show and y'all got a pretty awesome valuation. So I've got to ask, how was that experience? What was that like? And then secondarily, you got this great valuation, you got this deal, but you decided not to go through with it. Can you talk about that and what happened there and why you made that decision?
Yeah, so it was a lot of fun being on the show. We being my business partner and I, we didn't apply to be on the show. I just got approached by a casting agent. One day I got a phone call from someone who had read an article about the business in like Forbes or Inc. or something and said, "Hey, your business is really cool. Have you ever thought about being on Shark Tank?" And I said, "No." And he said, "Well, would you want to be on Shark Tank?" And I said, "Well, yeah, of course. That sounds like a lot of fun." So I learned that many of the businesses that you see on the show are sort of recruited to come on the show. And we did have a really high valuation on the show. I think at the time it was the highest ever valuation for a female founded company. And we had every intention of going through with the deal that we got. We were offered deals from 4 of the sharks. 2 of them came together to do a deal. But once we got into the due diligence phase, it just didn't make a lot of sense. It was one of those things where, the equity is not only very expensive, it is also you give a lot up. And, I can't get like too much into the specifics, but the show is not really designed for people who are just looking for an investment. It's people who need a lifeline. And so they're willing to sort of like take anyone offered. But it's funny, we ended up doing projects for both of the sharks that we were supposed to go into business with. So although we didn't end up taking their investment, we did end up doing some work for both of them. So it was a really fun experience, something that I'm glad I did, something that honestly I hadn't considered the long tail effect of. But that episode still re-airs like once a month in the United States and all the time around the world. And I can always tell when it airs because there'll be like 8,000 or 9,000 more people than usual on my website that day because everybody's like searching for an update. So it's been fun to kind of have people constantly coming in with that frame of reference of like 2015. Like they, because to them it like just happened, even though to me it was like forever ago.
That's amazing.
That's really awesome.
To point out, and as impressed as Max and I am as well of the Shark Tank experience, I mean, good Lord, getting into Walmart as early as you did. I have a good friend, and Max is friends with him also, who runs a CPG company, and they would be thrilled for either one of those successes to either get into Walmart or to get on Shark Tank. So congratulations. That's just really incredible that you're able to do both those things so early in your career.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, it was a lot of stars aligned. I was very fortunate to have a lot of things go right.
It's
Well, and it
awesome.
seems like that's kind of your the theme of your story getting up to this, right? You had obviously you created a successful business, but then you decided to sell most of your shares and walk away and start kind of this new trajectory in your life. Talk about that. Why? What? How did you come to that decision? I'm sure that wasn't easy. And what was kind of the thought process behind there, and what were you hoping to accomplish moving forward?
Yeah, well, I never I always wanted to be an author. Like I always wanted to write. That was something from the time I was tiny, tiny. Like I mean, even my mom will tell you as a baby, I did not sleep with toys. I slept with books. Like she has all these pictures of me, which is funny because I was born in the 80s. So my crib was like a death trap with all the like, crazy like quilted blankets everywhere and like all the things that now you're like not allowed to have around kids and just like piles of books. So I always knew that I wanted to write a book. I didn't know that I could be a keynote speaker. Like I just didn't know that was a job you could have. But after Shark Tank, I started doing a lot of consulting and then I started getting asked to do a lot of speaking. And I had done a little bit of speaking here and there, mostly as biz dev for my startup. But once people started saying, "What's your speaker fee?" I was like, wait, they pay you to do this? Like I can make money to get on stage and go speak about something that I'm so incredibly passionate about. That seems awesome. So for a few years, I was speaking and running the business, and it just became too much. And I was about to turn 30. My husband and I were ready to start a family. And so I was like, I need to start thinking about what an exit plan looks like to be able to, leave New York, move to Nashville, which is where we live now. And so just, figured out what it would look like to lead the business. And one of the things I have to say, like, it was so hard because I had a lot of my identity tied up in that company. I started it on my own from an idea that I'd had when I was in college that I'd been trying to sell into people for years and years. Like there was so much of my identity tied into that. And I'll never forget, I was having lunch one day with a friend who's a little bit older. And she said, "Do you really think at the end of your career, you're going to look back and say like, wow, all the greatest things that I did were things I did before I was 32? And I was like, well, I hope not. And she was like, then why are you so wrapped up in like walking away from this thing that you've done? Like you've got your entire career, you've got your whole life to do like more big, amazing things. Don't stay in something that you feel like you've outgrown just because you feel like you have a responsibility to it, that you built it. Like it is not a human baby. It is a business. You can sell it to someone who will like bring the passion that you previously had and don't feel so much toward it anymore." So that was like my first big lesson in pivoting, and that it's okay to say like, it's time to admit that I've outgrown this thing and go on to the next thing. So for me, that next thing was really diving into my love of customer experience, trying to get other people obsessed with this idea of customer centricity as a way to differentiate yourself from your competitors.
That's amazing. So when I started reading the book, we've done a recent effort in the past 4 or 5 months on customer gifting, right? And that's what I thought the book was going to be about. I thought it was going to be a couple of chapters over gifting and then a bunch of examples. Most of the business books are just like one idea and then a lot of examples. Yours was so much more, and I want to dive into start with your story and then understand your customer's story, because I think it's super important for any business, but specifically in the real estate and mortgage industry right now. But before we go there, you mentioned one of your favorite gifts you've received when you made that transition, the blender. Would you mind talking about that for a second?
Yeah. So a friend of mine, John Ruhlin, who actually is the author of what I think is the best book on gifting. It's a book called Giftology that I highly recommend. Oh, are you going to hold up a copy? I think Eric's reaching
I
for.
don't know, but I've had the pleasure of speaking with John. So when you started talking about him, I thought it was awesome. I got one of his boxes from him with the video.
Yep.
And not to get too sidetracked, but I did watch your podcast with Dave Savage, and I noticed the gift he sent you was the gift you sent Dave was very similar to what John had sent me. So anyway.
Yep. John is fantastic. And he sent me, I posted on Facebook saying, can somebody please tell me what blender to buy? Because it is like overwhelming. Like my blender broke, and I was like, I did not realize I was going to have to get like a doctoral degree in blender. Like I just want a freaking blender. Why is this so hard? And I was very overwhelmed and confused. So I did what a lot of people do when they're overwhelmed and confused. I was like, Facebook, please tell me the answer to this problem. And So then I was even more confused because like 100 people weighed in and were like, get the one with Bluetooth. And I'm like, what? I don't understand why my blender has Bluetooth. Like, what is happening? So John very kindly sent me this Vitamix blender with a note saying, good luck blending your new career as a speaker with mom life. Like, I know you're going to crush it, which was just so great because it was a very contextually appropriate gift with like a genius note, but it gave me something that is like better than the gift, which is it took a decision off my plate. It took something that I was going to have to do and like took it away. So while I did not write a book just about gifting, I do think gifting is a very important part of customer experience and something that I see realtors and people in the mortgage and title industries do wrong all the time. And I will like die on this hill. And I know this is something John is very passionate about too. If it has your logo on it, it is not a gift. It is an ad. It might be a nice ad. It might be an ad that's on the side of a Yeti or like a, what are the things called? Cooking board, cutting board. You can tell how much I spend in the kitchen. Cutting board. Like it might be a nice ad, but it is still an ad. Like stop putting your logo on stuff. Nobody in the world was ever like, you know what I need? Cool stuff with random logos on it. Like no one is as passionate about your brand as you are. Focus on doing something awesome for them and they will remember. You don't need to like put your logo on it. You never like write your name on the bottom of a pair of shoes that you give someone for Christmas so that they remember they're from you. Like stop wasting your money on like dumb premiums with your logo on it. They just get donated and then probably thrown away by the donation place.
When you use the term, you use the term in the book, radical generosity, and I think that all kind of plays into it, right? Like doing something where you don't necessarily have to have your logo on it because you look at it like this blender and you remember this came from John, this came from Eric, this came from Matt, and that kind of thing a lot of times can mean a lot more.
None of the best gifts you got have the name of the recipient on them, but you remember who they're from and what they're about.
To go back to the Yeti example, when I was reading the book, there's another point you touch on, which is shower those they love with love. And my wife immediately said, well, do you remember the financial advisor that gave Beck a Yeti tumbler with his name? Beck's my son. And at the time he was 2 or 3 years old. And it's still his tumbler today that has Beckett on the side of it. And we have tons and tons of Yetis and they're great. I mean, they're very useful. But that's Beck's tumbler. That's what he's always going to use until he's a teenager and doesn't want to, use anything that we've given him at that point. But it's a great point that the gifts should speak for themselves. I do believe there's a time and a place for swag also. But for your VIP A+ clients, for example, like give them something that they're going to remember you gave.
Absolutely. And just a shout out to actually a mortgage partner of mine, Ruoff Mortgage, had me speak at an event about a month ago. And it was in Indianapolis and I'd got in late at night and the client was asking, oh, how was the hotel? How was the room? What was your view? And I was like, the only reason I know the answer to that question is because I'd FaceTime my kids in the morning and my 6-year-old always says like, Mom, what's outside your hotel room? So I'd opened up the window and I was like right on top of this minor league baseball stadium. And I was like, oh, it's a baseball stadium. And they were asking all kinds of questions about baseball because both the kids love baseball. They love going to games. And I was like, guys, I don't know who the team is. I don't even know what city I'm in. It's like somewhere in Indiana. And they laughed and they were like, oh, it's the Fort Wayne Tin Caps. And our mascot is Johnny Appleseed. And I was like, oh, that's really cool. Like, I'll have to be sure and tell my kids. And I told them, and then I forgot about it. Like a week later, a box shows up with all of this Tin Caps merch, hats for both the boys, shirts for both the boys, a stuffed animal, all this cool stuff. And a note from Hannah that was like, hi, Cato and Jones. Wanted to send you some gear from our team, the Tin Caps. Our mascot is Johnny Appleseed. Did you know that a mascot's job is to get people excited? That's what your mom did for our company when she came to talk about creating Superfans. She was on stage and she got us all excited. And now we can't wait to create Superfans. We hope that you guys get to come see a Tin Caps game. But we wanted to thank you for sharing your mom with us. She's the best, just like you guys love your Superfans at Ruoff Mortgage. And, the thoughtfulness behind that gift means more than like anything that they could have sent for me, right? Because not only do I get to look like a rock star to my kids with like the fun merch for them and the little goodies that they put, there are all kinds of little cute like kid stuff in the box. But also for them to like tie that in and make a connection. And I don't know if they know this or not, but my first job was as a mascot. Like I was a radio station mascot when I was 16 years old. So that was like a fun full circle thing for me to explain to the kids. So yes, anytime you can love on somebody's family, anytime you can make mom or dad look like a hero or grandma or grandpa look like a hero at home, that's going to go a long way and people will remember.
That's amazing. That's absolutely amazing. Jumping into sort of the super acronyms, and it makes logical sense to start with S or U, but I noticed in the book, and I don't know if you jumped right into E, but you basically said you have to be really good at your job and you have to already provide great service. Otherwise, it's a non-starter. You're not going to provide a great consumer experience without great customer service, like exceeding expectations. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So I think one of the things that people overlook is like it has never been easier for anyone to get into any career. Like we have so much technology available at our fingertips, even like pre-ChatGPT. Like it is so much simpler for someone to get into any industry than it was 10, 20, 30 years ago. And we're no longer living in like simply a product or service economy. Those days are gone forever. It is now all about the experience. How you differentiate yourself from your competitors is based solely on the experience you provide, period, full stop. Like that's it. I don't care if you're in a commodity driven market or like a more luxury driven market. It is about the experience. That is what differentiates you. And so in the book, I talk about the fact that like being good at your job is no longer a differentiator. Like you have to be good. If you're not good, you're not going to be in this business for long. Like the question that you need to be asking is, why should someone pick me at the exclusion of everyone else who also does a great job? Like you need to be worried not about like, oh, I'm going to get some business and that's fine because we're all about the same. Like that is an old school mentality. You have to assume that everyone else is great at their job too. And you have to figure out how to make someone care about you as the person they're going to pick instead of all of those other people. So like the cost of entry, the table stakes are being great at your job. Like if you're not great at your job, like go focus on being great at your job and then come back and read this book later. Because if you don't deserve super fans, like if you are not showing up and proving that you are deserving of them, then like it's a non-starter. So yes, in the book, I talk about this idea of creating super fans, connecting your story to your customer's story, but the expectation of really taking care of them has to be there before any of this other stuff matters.
And we've used the word care a whole lot over the past couple of years. It's something that people can be competent and not really care deeply about providing the best service that they possibly can. And that's been the biggest differentiator that I've noticed, are that, I'm run a real estate brokerage. Max runs a mortgage bank. The agents who really care a lot and are really proud of their service, their customer experience, those are the agents that tend to succeed more. They're naturally doing it. I don't know, Max, have you seen the same thing with LOs?
100%. You have the LOs that, not at my company, but there's a lot out there that will just throw something against the wall to see what sticks. And, oh, it doesn't matter. Well, this loan didn't close. But then you have to think about, okay, this loan didn't close, but who did that impact and how? You now have somebody who put up money to get under contract, possibly get a home inspected, whatever. Now all of a sudden they don't qualify. They're going to be out of that money. But at the same time, they're also possibly out of a place to live, right? Did they already put in notice? What are they doing? And then you've got a seller who's now taken their property off the market. Did they get under contract and go buy? There's so many dominoes, and I could keep going on. But the point is, like, if you don't care and you're just throwing stuff up against the wall to see what sticks, you're not doing a service to your immediate customer or anybody else involved in the transaction. So it's really, that's the kind of mentality that you need to have. It's not just this one person. And the same with real estate and however other many industries as well, right? Like your customer isn't just necessarily this one person. And I preach it to my guys all the time. And Brittany, after listening to your book, Like the one thing that I keep playing into my head is, do we all know who our customers are, right? And how many customers do you have? I know that I have 3 customers. I have borrowers, I have referral partners, and I have loan officers. Those are my customers. And while the approach to each of them is going to be different, the super acronym, all of that really remains the same. It's just how you execute.
Yeah, absolutely. And so for anyone hearing about it for the first time, the super acronym is just a mnemonic device to help you remember that being great is no longer good enough. You've got to be super if you want to create these super fans, and really systematizing a lot of these experiential things into action items that everyone on your team can come into alignment with. So S stands for start with your story. And start with your story is really about figuring out your uniqueness, your difference, so that if you know, as Max knows, that he's got 3 customers, how are you talking about what sets you apart from your customers to each of those 3 audiences? Because what you're saying to an LO is very different than what you're saying to a borrower, and those might be slightly nuanced from what you're saying to a referral partner. So start with your story. I'm always blown away when I say to people, why should I pick you at the exclusion of everyone else? And they don't have an answer. Or they say something like, well, I've been doing this for 20 years. And I'm like, cool, that guy just told me he's been doing it for 27. Is he 7 years better than you are? Of course not. Well, then why are you telling me you've been doing this for 20 years? Like, that's not a compelling reason. Like, this person that's been doing it for 3 years might like be better at technology than you. Like, stop giving these like nonsensical things that don't matter to your customers. So the S is start with your story. Figure out why someone should choose you, because if you can't answer that in a clear, concise, compelling way, guess what they're going to think? You must not be the best partner, and maybe they're right. So you've got to be able to answer that question. Think about like on a reality TV show, you've got a few seconds to tell your story in a way that makes someone care about you, that makes them interested in you. Like they feel like they've got some sort of vested interest in you. That is your job. Like, what is your story? What is your uniqueness? What makes you the best person in the world to help those people with this problem that they're trying to solve?
So when you said, so to come back to that, because I know there's a lot of people in a lot of industries. Obviously, we're in real estate and mortgage, so we'll keep coming back to that a lot. But you have people that are really, really great at their job, but maybe not necessarily the best at articulating why. And maybe they don't have the skill set to articulate, or they've just never really sat down to think about it or learn. How would you tell somebody or coach somebody in the beginning to, okay, you're really, really great at what you're doing, but this is how you start your origin story? How would you coach them on that?
Well, one really good way is to ask your customers what they say about you, because sometimes it's really hard to work on your own story because you're so close to it. So when you start to think about like, what are the things that other people say, that other people notice and appreciate about you, that's one really good way to do it. Another way is to ask yourself, what are your favorite things that you do every day? Like, what are the parts of your job that you love the most? What did you love to do when you were a kid? Like, what did you want to be when you grew up? And what are the elements of whatever that profession is in what you're doing in real estate or mortgage? So starting to really dissect the things that you love to do. Like, what are you excited about when you get up in the morning versus what are the things that you're like, I have to do this because this is part of the job. Lean into those things that you love. Like, that's your intuition telling you something. That's, the true you showcasing your uniqueness. And rather than trying to be everything to everyone, if you lean into talking about those things that you love to do, those things that you feel like you're so qualified at, what's going to start to happen is you're going to attract more of the customers to whom that's the most important thing. And so instead of having, 11 different customers at any given time that are all completely different, you start to attract more customers who care about the things that you care about.
That's such a great point. And I think you sort of moved into the you understand your customer's story there, and that's what it's difficult to explain to a lot of real estate agents because the commissions are very, very high, and many agents will sell. A really high producing agent could sell 15 to 20 homes a year, and that's it. So if you lose 2 or 3 customers, that's a big percentage of your income. What I've seen happen to myself, and what I've seen happen firsthand with a lot of agents, are that whenever you do start building your niche, and you do start really targeting and understanding your customer, it opens up more time and you do start attracting more of your ideal customer. Like you said, you have to start with your story. People generally like to work with others that are similar to them. So you really can't move on to you understanding your customer until you're able to start with S, start with your story. I love it. I think the acronym works incredibly well in a service-based industry.
Well,
Eric,
thank
where
you.
are Superfans created?
So Superfans
The
are created at the
intersection.
intersection of your story and every customer story. And I say in the book that you can think of each of these letters kind of like nesting dolls. Each one builds on the one that comes before. So S is start with your story. U is understand your customer story. They're two sides of the same coin. But to your point, Eric, like it's not enough just to understand what your customers need, because different customers are going to need different things. I mean, every customer is going to need different things. But when you start to look at what you like to do most, that's when you can say, okay, I love helping this type of customer, whether that's empty nesters, whether that's first-time home buyers, whether that's veterans and their families. Like, obviously, you're going to help anyone who needs your help. But when you realize that there are certain types of clients who you just love that challenge. You love helping them with a certain type of transformation that you see again and again and again within people who are moving in from out of state, or people who are downsizing or upsizing or whatever it is. Once you get clarity on that, you can start to tell your story in a way that's going to make you the automatic first pick for more of those types of people. And one of the things that I talk about in the book and why this is so important is, to your point, Eric, like 2, 3, 4 sales can be a huge percentage of your income for a year. And you are oftentimes losing out on those before you even know who those people are. It's like your name either was not mentioned by a past customer, or it was mentioned and somebody quickly went to your website or one of your socials and was like, meh, and didn't out. So you don't even know who they are, because when they saw you, they were like, meh, average. Like, who wants to work with an average realtor? Who wants to work with an average loan originator? Nobody, right? You want one that you feel like is not the best in the world, but the best in the world for you. And you're not going to be able to determine who is the best in the world for you if they're not sharing enough details for you to say, oh, they help people just like me. They've helped people who are trying to solve the same problems I'm trying to solve. So talking about what you do in a way that's not just like very vanilla ice cream, like I can help anybody with anything. Whoever wanted to go to somebody who could help anyone with anything, right? Unless it's like a genie who can grant wishes. Like, no, you want somebody who has helped people like you solve the problems that you have.
Definitely. Yeah. And the Dolly Parton quote that you mentioned in the book, which I believe I'm paraphrasing it, I guess I'll say it that way, is that figure out what it is that you do and then do it on purpose. And that resonated incredibly well. You first have to figure out what it is you're doing and why you love it, why you love what you do. And then you say, great, I'm going to lean into that. This is exactly what I do. You mentioned a bunch of different niches that agents love. First-time home buyers, incredibly satisfying. For a long time, my favorite thing in the world was helping people relocate to Austin. And my story at the time that I would tell people was, so I moved here from Oklahoma. It was moving to the big city for me. And what I love about Austin is that no one's from here. You get to meet a lot of people pretty easily. And you say that and it rolls off the tongue and people believe it because it's true and it's what you're absolutely passionate about. So I do think that step one, figure out who you are, figure out what it is you do, write it down, be able to really communicate it really well.
Thank you. Yeah, that's exactly right. And something that as you mentioned, like for a while you wanted to tell people like, I love people moving to Austin. Like I love first-time home buyers. What your story is today does not have to be what your story was 3 years ago. What your story is 3 years ago is not what your story is now. Like you should be reevaluating these things every 6 to 12 months. You should be Googling yourself, seeing what comes up, going to your socials for the first time, going to your website for the first time. Are you constantly evolving your story in a way that is relevant to the types of customers that you're trying to attract now?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, things evolve, right? Your interests evolve. So I tell my own story. Like after I loved relocating for a long time, I grew into a heavy lister. And what I realized was I loved building systems that could work and would be effective over and over and over. And that's how I would sell. That's how I would tell people. I would say, listen, this is a really, really highly successful system that we've run through hundreds of times. And this is why you're going to get the best result, from that, because it's been used multiple times. So I love it. I think it's a phenomenal way to approach business.
Well, thank you.
Brittany, we're stopping. We're just talking about how much we love the book.
Guys, come on.
So let me do this. Okay, so topically applicable right now. And whenever I emailed you and pitched you about coming on the show, I said, hey, are you aware of the commission lawsuits? And I feel like that the super acronym and creating Superfans.
Oh, did we lose him?
Are you still? Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yep, it was a little bit, frozen, but I think
so what's great about
the internet freezes you when you say commission lawsuit. It's some sort of tech that you've got on your computer that's like, nope.
The FBI agents are listening in. That's what happened. So what keeps being said over and over is that agents are going to have to learn how to communicate value better than they have in the past because of the commission lawsuits. And I feel like start with your story, understand your customer's story. That's what's specifically applicable here. One thing I'd like to touch on as well, though, is that agents are typically they're pretty fearful right now that it's going to empower, lack of a better word, cheapskates, people that don't want to pay the going rate for buyer's agency. So I think that part of understanding your customer story is also understanding who your customer isn't. And you mentioned in the book that the customer isn't always right because not everyone is your customer. And would you care to speak on that for just a minute?
Yeah, of course. I mean, and I'm going to say the quiet part out loud. There is some good that will come from this lawsuit. And I think anyone who works in real estate needs to be the first one to raise their hand and admit there have been some terrible realtors living on a gravy train because they have had a fixed, they've had a pretty good deal going, right? You could be a pretty shitty realtor and make a pretty good living for a long time. So I think that not all of the change here is bad change. And yes, there's a little bit of uncertainty into what's going to happen. But to your point about it being more important than ever to communicate value, you should be talking about the fact that this is going to weed out the bad realtors and even the OK realtors from the great ones, the ones that are in this not for the commission, but because they're changing lives, they're helping families, they're building communities. Being able to communicate your value in a way that the right customers, to your point, Eric, will understand. You're always going to have those people who are going to fight about the commission, who don't want to pay anything. Those are not the types of customers that you want. In my book, I talk about the fact that you have people that even though they are they're repeat purchasers of a brand, they're not loyal to the brand. They're buying that brand or they're patronizing that store or restaurant or whatever it is because it's the cheapest or the closest.
Right.
But the minute somebody offers them something a little better, they are gone. That's not the type of customer that you want. You don't want customers who are going to have their loyalty be wherever they're going to save a little bit of money here or there. So don't worry too much about the customers that you're potentially going to lose. It's going to take years for this thing to make its way through courts. Who knows how it's all going to shake out? But in the interim, something that I think is a really good thing that both sellers and buyers agents have going for them is this is adding confusion. This is something that 2 or 3 years ago when people were oh, it's as simple as looking on Zillow and pressing a button and going to, do a show. Can I just do it myself? Now, when people are hearing about interest rates and lawsuits and all of these things happening, it's muddying the water. It's making it murky. So this is a great opportunity for you to say, yeah, this is not a world that you need to be navigating on your own. You need someone who this is all I do day in, day out. I live in this world. I'm an expert at this. I am staying on top of all of these things so that you don't have to worry about any of them. All you have to worry about is telling me exactly what your dream home is so that I can help go make that a reality for you. I'm going to help you find a place that you and your family or you and, whoever are going to love to live. I'm going to go help you find the type of community that you're excited to be a part of. So don't focus so much on the things that feel scary and nebulous and up in the air. Remember that it is your job to help make the scariest, most intimidating, most, grandiose purchase in someone's life feel a little bit less confusing and overwhelming and uncertain. That is your job.
And safer, right? I mean, they're huge. It's so high impact if something goes wrong. Sorry, Max. It's that if you're there as sort of an insurance policy that you're making sure and checking all the boxes that it's going to go well. I think that there's a whole lot of value in the consumer sleeping well because of that. So Max, what were you going to say?
Well, this all really, it also ties to the mortgage business. Obviously rates are where they are and in the sevens, and it's been this whole thing for the last year and a half. And, just as Brittany, you mentioned, there's going to be some good that comes of this because there's going to be a lot of shitty realtors that get pushed out of the business. You're seeing that happen with loan officers as well.
Yeah.
And like really right now, and I think this is why this book has resonated so much with me. I bought 8 copies, by the way, because you can only buy 4 at a time. And I started giving them out to people. I had to have my wife buy 4. But like this, what we do is help people. Loan officers are not the cheapest rate out there, period. Like, how are you helping people? What is this plan, right? How are you going to get them into this mortgage, not just for now, but for 6 months from now, 12 months from now, 36 months from now, whatever that is? What is the whole package? What is the story? How are you putting things together? And how are you maneuvering this? Now you're not going to be able to sell your house before you close, where, 2 years ago, I got to sell first, but I'll just go put a sign in the yard and that it's sold. It's not a problem. How are you going to navigate those waters? So it's like so much of this is so applicable to both of our industries. I think people would be doing themselves a disservice by not reading this book and trying to implement at least some of what you're offering.
So yeah, I mean, and to go back to that, whenever you have somebody rate shop you, or and in the hypothetical future, whenever a buyer's agent has to discuss the commission really early in the process, part of our story has always been like, hey, we provide phenomenal service. That's our thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like we're here to provide you the best experience you can possibly have. And hey, yeah, we also charge the full commission amount, and that's typically come up on the seller side, and it has been really surprising to me how few sellers push back on it. And it's been surprising. It used to be surprising to me that whenever we told them, no, look, we don't negotiate on that because this is just what we charge, because there's lots of people that are willing to pay it and we go above and beyond. How few push back on that. There are those that continue pushing. And there was 1 year that I said yes. I was like, man, we've got all these systems. We're just going to take them, right? Nobody had a good experience in those transactions. I didn't. Our staff didn't, and the customer didn't either, because they saw no value in what we were doing, and they were still wishing that they'd gotten it a little bit cheaper. They didn't care that we were providing good service. Those were not our customers whatsoever. And at the end of the year, we said, you know what, we're not going to do that anymore. And everybody had great experiences moving forward. Not always, but you know what I mean. Many more great experiences moving forward from there. So I think your book does an amazing job of illustrating what you can do to get to that place.
Well, thank you. And I think, the thing that's so important about what you just talked about is having integrity around your fee, around your commission structure, around what you charge. Does a couple of things. Number one, it lets people like self-select out, right? When you say this is our policy and somebody doesn't agree with that policy, fine. There are lots of other places they can go and try to nitpick and negotiate and like cost, maybe save themselves a little bit of money, but cost themselves like so much heartache because they have a terrible experience with somebody else. Fine, let those people go. The other thing is the sense of security of when you say we don't negotiate, that's our policy. What that says to everyone is they have integrity, and it's not like I could have asked differently, or I could have done a better job, or I could have whatever and like got a different outcome. It's this is how it is. And I think that certainty also gives people that are your customer a sense of like, cool, this is just how it is. And a lot of times when customers ask questions like that, it's not because they're really trying to like for mortgage in particular, it's not because they're really trying to like rate shop or nickel and dime. It's because they don't know what they don't know. And the only thing that they care about is rate and this idea of like, oh, it's a number. And that's why I know you mentioned before Dave Savage. That's why I'm such a huge proponent of everything that Dave and his team do, because if all you know is that you've been told that there's like an interest rate and it's a number and that the lower ones are better than the higher ones, you're clearly missing out on like 95% of the bigger picture. But you don't know what you don't know until somebody comes along and says, here's why this matters. Here's why it's important. And oh, by the way, this is why you need to be working with an expert like me. Like I'm one of those types of people that like, I was going to say I won't even charge, or I won't even change the oil in my own car, but I drive a Tesla now. So I'm pretty sure there's like not oil in it. I don't know. Maybe there is. This is why I don't do car myself. But like, I don't want to mess up my Wi-Fi. So I'm going to like have somebody come do the Wi-Fi. Like, I don't want to mess up my car. So I'm going to have people do stuff for my car. Like, we're talking about an investment that is so many times exponentially bigger than all of those things. So to be able to say to people like, Do you really want to try to do this yourself when a mistake could cost you tens, hundreds of thousands of dollars? Of course not. That's why you're paying this fee, so that you can have people who all we do is make sure that you have the best experience possible and you have all of the right information. You have all of the up-to-date ins on the things that like you don't need to be thinking about. You need to be thinking about like packing up all your shit and moving it to your new house and the new school district and the new dance classes and like all of those things. So being able to communicate that value, if somebody doesn't see it, great, bless and release that customer. That is not someone who is going to be someone that would be loyal to you or that you would enjoy working with. And exactly.
Definitely bless and release them. So a statistic you mentioned in the book, and I think I won't get it exactly right, but it's something like 85% of consumers are willing to pay a little bit more if the product comes with a good experience. And so in our industries, like the product is the experience, the product is the service. And I think that being okay with releasing that 15% that don't care about the experience at all is super important. I was out riding with a good friend of mine, and right after, and he does well for himself, and right after he told me that he'd spent 3 hours mowing his own lawn, he asked me if all agents were going to go out of business because of this commission lawsuit. And I was like, well, yeah, man, if everybody was like you and was willing to go mow their lawn for 3 hours every day rather than just, have a good experience over saving that whatever you saved $100, then that would be the case. But that's not the case. 85% of the folks out there want to have the security that they're not making mistakes. They want to have a great experience and they want to use a professional. We've looked all around, the world at how real estate's transacted. And I didn't find a single market where agents weren't involved because agents just make the experience a little bit better.
Amen. Have you guys, I know we're talking about my book today, but have you guys read 10X is Easier Than 2X?
No.
Oh my gosh, you guys have to immediately read this book. It is my second favorite book of the year after my own. It is by Benjamin Hardy and Dan Sullivan. 10X is easier than 2X. And the principle behind the book is that most people are trading time for money. They think if I work twice as hard, I can make twice as much money. And so they just like grind away doing more of the things. Versus people who have like this exponential viewpoint of I can change my reality, I can create wealth, I can do new, novel, innovative things, are making 10X. And making 10X is easier than making 2X because instead of the grind, it's thinking about how do I solve this problem differently? How do I get out of the trap of trading time for money? How do I go after what I want, not what I feel like I need? So it's a really, really great book. Highly, highly recommended. It's very applicable to mortgage and real estate specifically because of the fact that you're in that entrepreneurial space, that you have the freedom to design your own future and also the trap of a lot of times feeling like you have to be all the things to all the people. So in the book, he talks a lot about, some of the things that you need to let go of. And the fact that your friend is worth a lot of money and mows his own yard, unless it is a hobby, and I've never met someone for which mowing the yard is a hobby, that is a terrible investment, right? And you see that, like he is losing so much money, like that $100 or whatever that he's not spending so that he can use $1,000 of his own time on something meaningless in the big picture is an indication that he is like a 2X person, not a 10X person, at least in that.
Yeah, I think the way that I've always thought about it is whenever you come to the realization that time is the most valuable asset and you can't really like get more of it. So anytime you can pay for more of your own time, as long as it's a good trade, you should always do that. Right. So exactly what you said, stop grinding, start figuring out how you can free up as much of your time as possible. And we always use the term, whatever your highest and best use is, whatever it is that is the most valuable thing that you can do. The more of that you do, the bigger return you're going to get. I'm excited. I'll read the book.
Yeah, the book is so good. There's a Black Friday, or I guess it's Cyber Monday now, but I bought them a couple of days ago for a bunch of people because it was on sale at Amazon. I've bought now, I think, more of this book than any other book this year to give away to people because it is just such a great book. And I also have embraced the idea that time is the most valuable asset, the only non-renewable resource. Something that the authors of this book actually say is that's almost right but not quite right, because what's even more valuable than your time is your attention, because attention is intrinsic, time is extrinsic. It's not just your time, It's the attention and how you're focusing that time. So thinking about the things that you're doing all across your life, personally, professionally, every facet of it, but like what you're actually focusing your attention on is speaking to whether or not you're 2xing or 10xing.
That's a great point. And going back to working with the wrong customers, it's not about just the time you spend on the phone with them or the time you spend trying to explain something to them again that they don't want to listen to. Your attention span goes well beyond that. If you have a bad experience with a bad customer, it's not the 20 minutes. It's probably the entire evening you spent thinking about them. And when you can get that off of your plate, oh man, it opens up so much time and attention span to do other productive things. I love it.
Well, and to your point, Eric, too, those customers that you did negotiate with, that you decided I was going to make less money on to try to make this deal work, they ended up taking more of your time, most likely, because that's how it always works, right? So now you have even less time to give your attention to do other things because you've negotiated with yourself or negotiated with this customer. And I think that comes back to what you were saying earlier, that it's a good reason not to do that.
Couple questions for you, Brittany. One, so what business or businesses are you passionate about? Who are you a super fan? Who are you a super fan of?
So I am a super fan of so many products and businesses. One that I have been spending a lot of money with lately is Zevia. And I'm addicted to Dr. Pepper. Like, I drink so much sugar and I shouldn't.
I would not have guessed that.
Oh my gosh. Like in Oklahoma, it's like the only thing you're allowed to drink because you're so close to Texas. So I think I have been drinking Dr. Pepper since probably my first birthday. And I love it. Zevia is a company that makes 0-calorie sweeteners, but with stevia. So they're actually like decent for you. They don't have any of the like artificial chemicals and junk in them. You can get it at Whole Foods, but I love it. And they have dupes for like every kind of soda. So whether you like Dr. Pepper, cherry Coke, root beer, orange soda, grape soda, whatever, they got you covered. So like if you, like me, are addicted to sugary drinks, check out Zevia. That is it's a really good one.
How are they providing an exceptional customer experience? I mean, you're buying it from Costco. What do they do? What do they do that's made you a super fan?
So I appreciate the marketing and the branding and the fact that they are very transparent about everything that is in every one of them. And they will even tell you on some of the flavors, you can go to their website and they say like, here's something that is not like our favorite ingredient. It is organic. It is, ethically sourced, but we're working to find an even better one. So having that transparency. And for a lot of brands, like speaking as somebody who did so much work at Walmart, like you're not always going to control every single touch point. Like there are times there are going to be retailers or wholesalers that are involved. And so what you've got to do is maximize the share of attention that you have for that customer. So being able to say like, what does my packaging look like? What does my website look like? What are my socials like? Like, what are the touch points that are in my control so that I can send someone into the environment that I don't totally control and hope that even when they come out, I still have it. Because while it's true that there is a retailer, what's also true is that unless I'm on an app, I'm not bringing that retailer into my house. Like Whole Foods doesn't come home with me. What comes home with me is that product. And I'm going to continue to experience that product when I eat it, when I drink it, when I share it, when I look at it, when it's on my shelf or my refrigerator or, wherever it is that the product is that you're keeping in your house. And sometimes brands forget about that last part, but that's in my mind as important, if not more important than the retail part, because it's easy to do a retail campaign. It's easy to do a promotion or a sale and get somebody to try your product. What you've got to win is getting that person to buy your product again. The first time is easy. The second time is hard. The third time is even harder than that. What you're trying to do is win that last mile so that people become loyal customers. And in the book, I talk about the concept of the ladder to super fandom. And, when you get somebody to the point that they have adopted your brand, like they've come back again and again and again, that's great, but that's only part of it. Like you've got to get it to the point that they have an affinity for you. They're not just choosing you because it's on sale again for the 5th week in a row. They're choosing you because they like what you're about. And then after you get on that affinity rung, you've got to get to that advocacy rung to the people who have the capability to be advocates. So they're not just enjoying it, they're not just coming back, but they're telling people when given the opportunity to do so. They're offering your product to people when someone comes into their house. They're giving that recommendation when they have the ability to do so, either in real life or online.
It sounds like it's beyond even lifetime value of the customer, right? So you have the transactional value, the one purchase, and then lifetime value is infinitely higher than transactional value. But then what you're discussing, whenever somebody becomes, an evangelist, that is like exponentially, infinitely more valuable, right? I don't even know where you go with beyond infinitely.
Yeah.
But yeah, whenever you've created that, now all of a sudden you've sort of offloaded your marketing. This person's taking care of it for you, just because you've had such an amazing customer experience. So
Yeah, and what's so
Well, I
interesting
think
is like if you're not tracking that pass along value, you may be mentioning it. So I have a podcast called Creating Superfans, and
Yeah.
one of the episodes that I did this season was with a guy named Andy, who's the co-founder of a brand called Mention Me, and they're an affiliate and referral marketing company that creates individual URLs to track pass along. And he
Right.
was telling a story on the podcast about a flower delivery company, and if they were looking solely at how much has somebody ordered with this one particular customer, it was a relatively insignificant amount. It was like, a few $100s a year that she was spending. So they would have, if she had called in, if she had had a problem, if something had happened, they would have been like, okay, yeah, this is somebody who's a repeat customer, but not like a whale. However, by looking at the people who had bought from their website because of her, either because they had delivered flowers to she had sent them flowers and they had been delivered and then become a customer, or people who had read about it from her site, clicked onto it, it was like tens of thousands of dollars. And there are all types of customers like this, that if you're not tracking it, if you don't have the metrics in place to say, okay, where did this customer come from? Like, was there another customer that sent them to me? What was the decision tree that led to them picking me instead of somebody else? You could miss out on the fact that you have these highly influential customers who maybe aren't coming back to you right away, but are sending a dozen people to you before they come back again. So you've got to do a great job of asking your prospects, how did you hear about me? You've got to do a great job of connecting the dots back to, oh, if they said you sold a home to my neighbor 3 streets down a month ago, you need to close that loop. You need to thank that person, whether it's like just a phone call, whether it's a note, whether it's a gift, whatever it is. Like, you've got to do the things to encourage people to continue evangelizing on your behalf. And you've got to realize that that pass along value can sometimes 10x, 50x, 100x what that individual customer could do in their own lifetime.
Well, and what's really interesting about that, we're very, I don't know if my wife's watching now. She'll definitely watch this later, but she runs our CRM and does all of our marketing. She's amazing. But part of the CRM and what we really focus on is, where did the referral come from? And so in our world, there's 2 tabs, right? It's the referral and the agent, because it wasn't always the agent that referred. And sometimes it's a repeat referral from that agent. And so tracking, and so we're very methodical about, where did every lead that we get come from? What is our conversion rate? And it's interesting too, you talk to a lot of business owners that track these type of metrics, and what they find is the sometimes the people that are the loudest, that are making the most noise, aren't necessarily the ones referring them the most. They're just the ones that are always in their face. And if you're not tracking that, it's very easy to let these monster super fans that you don't even know about necessarily fall to the wayside.
Yeah, and a lot of times, like, you don't even know where somebody came from if you're not asking, or what the 2 or 3 degrees back were. Because I have so many people that will book me to speak, and on the forum they'll say like Google, and when I talk to them, it's not Google. It's the fact that like their friend Johnny said, I saw this speaker at a conference, I loved her, she was great, you should book her. But then they forgot my name, and so they Googled like Brittany customer experience or Superfan speaker or something like that. And so you've got to have the conversations, because a lot of times it's like going a level or 2 back, but that's where all of the intel is, like being able to say, okay, like that's when things like come to focus a little bit. So make sure like, and especially if we're talking about in real estate and mortgage, the amount of transactions that are being handled, even if you're a big team, is manageable. It is a small enough number to where there is not any excuse in the world for not knowing exactly not only how that person found you, but what their decision-making process was leading up to them reaching out to you, so that you can continue to lean into the things that are working and shift the things that aren't working.
The highest producing agents are generally in the 35 to 50 transaction a year range. And that's something that you could spend, less than an hour a day for a week, sourcing exactly where each transaction came from, putting it into a spreadsheet, and then you know what to go back to and take a look at, at the end of the year, how to go back and gift the right things, be grateful. It's just a step that a lot of agents don't do because it's tedious. It's like homework, and nobody likes to do homework, but it's incredibly high return. It's incredibly valuable.
Well, and the same way that like once people realize how much they're getting from that homework, whether it's extra points or, whatever, they start to like it a little more. The smart agents who do that and realize how high ROI it is, they begin to like it a whole lot more, because all of a sudden they realize there's money in this spreadsheet. There are dollars in this task that feels boring in the moment, but is going to help me operate my business from a, more informed standpoint.
Nice. Well, I know your kids are going to be home pretty soon. Any last things? And trust me, that's we had one of my mentors, Russell Shaw, on about a month ago, and love the guy to death. And we could have talked for hours, but I had to go pick up Beck, so it happens. Brittany, what do you see in the future? What exciting things are coming down the pipe? What are your favorite things that we haven't yet discussed?
One of the things that I'm really excited about is, I think, partially because of the lawsuits that are working their way through the courts right now, is that in 5 years, you are going to be exited from real estate pretty quickly if you're not good at it. So the
Right.
bar is going to continue to get higher, but also the margin is going to get smaller. Like, it's not going to be like really, really shitty people in mortgage and real estate and like really, really great people and everybody in this murky middle. It's going to be like this. So you're going to be able to continue to raise your game. You're going to have to continue to raise your game. One way through which that is going to happen is obviously through automation. I do not believe that automation will replace realtors or even LOs, because I think that for the foreseeable future, when people are making the largest, most complex purchase of their life, they're going to want to work with a human. So I think that's going to happen. But what I know is going to happen, because it already is people who embrace technology will replace those who do not. Because using technology is a way to multiply your time. It's a way to automate and systemize things that you no longer have to spend your attention on, so that you have more time to spend on the things that do matter. So if you're not already using ChatGPT, if you're not already plugging into AI, this is the time to be doing it, because you do not want to give every other agent a 2, 3, 5 year head start. Make sure that you're playing around with it. Even if you're not using it right now on things that are customer facing, you need to understand how you could be doing that if you want. You need to understand the types of prompts that you can write to create the type of content that may be better than what you're doing on your own right now, and certainly is more sustainable than what you're doing on your own right now. So I would say that's what I'm excited about in the future, is the fact that everyone is going to be raising their game, and that there are tools and technologies that are going to make it simpler for the great agents to become exceptional agents by using these free or low-cost tools to get their message to even more of the right potential customers at the right time.
ChatGPT is incredibly exciting, and I've described it to a lot of folks as a productivity multiplier. The people that are really good can lean in and they just magnify the production that they can output. And getting into it, gosh, Max and I were actually hanging out with another friend who just wouldn't get off of it. This is like what, last December, I think, January.
Yeah.
Goofy stuff. I mean, literally, create a picture of 4 awesome guys who are having beers, and then would show us what it makes. And he wouldn't get off of it. He's one of the smartest guys I know. And so when we got back home, I started playing with it, writing rap songs about my family. And it's just a lot of fun stuff. And you just do these goofy things. And then after you do the goofy things over and over, and you come up with more creative things to do, you then start finding actually useful things to use it for. So I think it's just important to just get familiar.
But even for people that have never used it before and are afraid, use it to write your Instagram post, or just make your hashtags with emojis. Like, just start there.
But have fun with it. Like make it goofy. Like, it needs to have like excessive Gen Z slang and included for that Instagram post, and then see what it can do. Iterate with it. It's a lot of fun. You can get really creative. I let Beck play with it, and I tell him, just have it write you stories, and he'll just have it sit there and write him new stories based on whatever thought pops up in his head. So, Brittany, are you using it for for much? I mean, it sounds like you're pretty familiar with it.
I am, yeah. And what I tell people is don't be intimidated by the term artificial intelligence. It's exactly as you said. It's a productivity multiplier, just like social media, just like cell phones 15 or 20 years ago, just like computers like a decade before that. Like, this is just another tool that allows you to not have to do manually some things that historically you've had to do manually. This is a way to increase your reach. One of my favorite ways for people in mortgage and real estate to use ChatGPT is to generate prompts for video creation. And then you can create the video yourself. Or if you don't want to, you can actually use AI to make videos for you. You can spend a couple of minutes creating an avatar of you and then plug a ChatGPT script into a platform like HeyGen that will make videos for you. But one of my favorite tools is, especially for people who don't have a lot of content that is out there, ask ChatGPT to help you with lists of, what are 20 things that every first-time home buyer should know? What are 20 things that anybody moving to Austin from out of state should know? What are 20 things that everybody should know before they make the decision to downsize? Like, all of these things, and have ChatGPT make that list for you. And if you like that list, have it then write a script for you for each of those things. Like, you can use it to do so much research, to really save a lot of time that you would have spent doing something that there is now no longer an excuse for you to do. Just like there's no excuse for you to spend 3 hours mowing your yard because there is a better use of your time. There is no reason for you to be researching many of the things that you're likely still researching right now.
Agreed. Absolutely. Agreed.
Yeah. Well, I know you gotta cut off. I hope we can come back and do this again. I have a million more questions for you. I know Eric does too, but thank you so much for your time and for coming on here. And again, guys, the book is Creating Superfans, and you can check out Brittany on her website. Here's a copy of the book. She's got it in the background. Do yourself a favor, go out and buy this now. You're definitely missing out if you're not.
Oh, it's amazing. Thank you, Brittany, so much for coming on. Like I said, you're a celebrity to Max and me, so it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Max. Thank you, Eric. I am so thrilled that we got the opportunity to do this. It was so much fun being here. I will absolutely come back anytime, and I will make sure that you guys get a copy of a gift guide that I'm about to put out. I know you said you were grateful that this wasn't just like a book about how to buy gifts. However, I do have a PDF that I've been putting together that's like 75 gifts that don't suck. Things that you can do that are repeatable, that are scalable, awesome. That take all of the super principles that you can use for a closing gift or a first-time home buyer gift or whatever you want to do. So I will get you guys a copy of that so that you can share with everyone in your audience. And if anybody else has any questions for me or I can do anything to be helpful, reach out. I'm just Brittany at BrittanyHodak.com, and I would love to connect.
And she's serious. I emailed her cold and told her how much I love the book, and that's how we started chatting for this.
And I was like, "Hey,
Brittany,
you seem cool. Can we be friends?" That's you. That's like my go-to response is like, "You seem cool. Can we be friends?"
Nice. and I didn't give the tell that I'm not cool. So
no, you're totally cool. You're totally cool. And I don't.
Eric's pretty all right. We've been friends for a long time. He's pretty all right.
We're friends now.
Awesome.